Tricia grew up in a rural area of East Texas, where her life was closely connected to nature. As an only child, Tricia had no siblings to share her joys or sorrows with, but she found solace in outdoor activities. On summer mornings, she and her best friend would get up early, riding horses and wandering around until the sun rose high and the air became too hot. They would stop by cool lakes, diving into the clear water to escape the summer heat. For Tricia, those days passed peacefully and colorfully, a world entirely different from what she had to face at home. However, Tricia's childhood was not always as peaceful as those mornings riding horses across the fields. Her mother suffered from a mental illness, and this led the family into a tense environment, sometimes resulting in both emotional and physical abuse. The constant arguments and violence at home caused Tricia to become quiet and withdrawn. She often spent time reading books and studying to escape from reality. Tricia realized that, to break free from her current situation, she had only one path: to study hard and earn scholarships to pursue a better life. Tricia's journey was not easy, but through determination and continuous effort, she won many scholarships with her outstanding essays. She wrote one essay after another, and with each award, she inched closer to her goal, escaping from the painful home and starting a new life at university. The scholarship checks kept coming, but because she lived in an old, run-down house, Tricia even worried whether their fragile mailbox was sturdy enough to hold these important rewards. Receiving scholarships was not only a source of pride for Tricia, but also a turning point in her life. It was her chance to escape the stagnant and painful life she had endured for so many years. The University of Texas became her dream destination, where she believed she would find freedom and success. However, things did not go as she had imagined. During her early years at the university, Tricia easily adapted to student life. Her academic performance was excellent, and it seemed as though a bright future awaited her. But everything slowly changed as she began to feel loneliness and emptiness within herself. Her mental decline became more apparent in her final year of university when she went through a painful breakup. The wounds from this relationship lingered, combined with unresolved emotional issues from her childhood, pushing Tricia into a spiral of loss and despair. To cope with these overwhelming emotions, she turned to alcohol and drugs, hoping to find temporary relief from the pain she was enduring. However, instead of helping her escape reality, these things only made Tricia's life worse. She started experiencing panic attacks, constantly thinking about death and the feeling of loss. Once a person who did not believe in religion or spiritual values, Tricia suddenly found herself obsessed with death and the concept of the end. She did not believe in life after death, and this only heightened her fear that one day everything would come to an end, and she would cease to exist forever. These panic attacks became a part of Tricia's daily life. Every time she felt the presence of death, she was haunted by the thought that all she had was the present, and time was slipping away while she had not achieved anything meaningful. The sense of helplessness and uncertainty overwhelmed Tricia, making her feel as if she was sinking deeper into a bottomless pit. Tricia decided to seek help from a therapist to try to address her mental health issues. The therapist recommended that she take up running, an activity she had loved in high school. For Tricia, running was not just a form of physical exercise, but a symbol of freedom and strength. She believed that if she ran fast enough, she could outrun her fears, her painful memories, and the demons in her mind. Determined to regain control of her life, Tricia began running every day, training for the Austin 10K race. Each run was a battle, not only with her body, but also with her mind. Tricia hoped that by pushing her body to its limits, she could find relief from the emotional pain that had been haunting her. But just before the race, Tricia began experiencing strange nightmares. She felt that something was wrong. as if something terrible was waiting for her ahead. She woke up on the morning of the race, feeling exhausted, and decided to skip her usual cup of coffee, something she had never done before. This strange feeling followed her throughout the morning, but she continued on her journey, unaware that a significant event was about to change her life. As Trisha drove to the race, she passed through the first intersection while the light was yellow, and nothing happened. However, when she reached the next intersection, she saw the red light, but couldn't understand why another car was speeding toward her. The moment passed in the blink of an eye, and a loud crash occurred as both cars collided at 60 miles per hour. Trisha's body was thrown to one side, and she immediately knew something was wrong. She couldn't move, and in that moment, all she could do was silently pray, "God, help me." After the accident, Trisha felt her body completely immobilized. She sat there feeling pain spread throughout her body, but she couldn't do anything to save herself. Those moments seemed to last forever, with every sense of time and space disappearing. Trisha couldn't even reach for her insurance papers or driver's license. She was utterly helpless. Fear consumed her every thought, and in that moment, all she could do was pray, "God, please help me." Fortunately, a passerby stopped. It was a nurse, a kind stranger who came to Trisha's side, held her hand tightly, and comforted her while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. The kindness and care of this woman felt like a small ray of hope amidst the storm of fear and pain that Trisha was going through. She would never forget the image of the nurse holding her hand, helping her stay calm until the paramedics arrived. Even though she couldn't move her body, inside, Trisha felt an odd sense of relief, knowing someone was there with her. When the ambulance arrived, they strapped Trisha onto a rigid stretcher and took her to the hospital in a state of shock. Everything was happening so fast, yet so slow at the same time. In Trisha's mind, 1,000 questions raced. Would she be able to walk again? Would she survive this? The pain grew more intense, but the doctors refused to give her any painkillers until a neurosurgeon could provide an accurate diagnosis. Trisha was strapped to the stretcher for 17 hours, waiting for the surgery to begin. Those hours of waiting felt like torture. The pain was not only physical but also mental, as she felt trapped in a fate beyond her control. Her family came and went, but Trisha was overwhelmed with exhaustion, frustration, and despair. When a nurse informed her that the neurosurgeon would soon come to talk to her, Trisha felt a small glimmer of hope. But when the doctor finally entered, Trisha had lost all patience. In agonizing pain, she blurted out, "If I can't walk again, I'll take my own life. So, I need you to operate on me." The doctor looked at her calmly and replied, "I will operate on you, but I've been on duty for 40 hours straight. I need to go home, rest, eat something, and then I'll come back to perform the surgery." Trisha felt a wave of relief wash over her. Finally, someone was willing to help her. Earlier, she had overheard a conversation about another doctor refusing to operate on her just because she didn't have health insurance. This made Trisha feel as if she were abandoned, as though she were just a useless body lying on a stretcher with no value in the healthcare system. She had worked so hard in life, and now she felt reduced to just a number in the hospital. When the time finally came for surgery, Trisha no longer feared death. Although the doctors had told her there was a 17% chance of dying, this didn't scare her. The only thing she cared about was whether she would be able to walk again after the surgery. Thoughts of life and death no longer seemed so important to Trisha. As the doctors wheeled her into the operating room, the surgeon held her hand tightly before she drifted into unconsciousness. And that was the last image she remembered before she left her body. When Trisha opened her eyes, she realized she was no longer lying on the operating table. She was floating above her body, observing the entire surgical process from a completely different perspective. She could see every detail, from the doctors working to the sound of the radio playing in the room. An Elvis Presley song was playing, a small detail that made Tricia realize she was still alive. Even though she had separated from her body, she was filled with awe and joy, recognizing that her consciousness still existed, even as her physical body lay there, injured. Tricia saw the doctors with a completely new perspective. They weren't just humans performing the surgery. Around them were towering beings of light, about 9 feet tall, which she called angels. These beings didn't communicate through words, but rather through telepathic transmission of thoughts and emotions. Tricia could feel them sending healing energy through the doctors, helping them perform the surgery perfectly. The angels reassured Tricia that she would walk again and could even run and jump like before. They sent powerful beams of light through her spine, illuminating her entire body. Tricia felt an overwhelming sense of relief, as if all her worries and fears had melted away. She thought to herself, "The doctors must know that angels are helping them. I'll ask them about it later." But suddenly, the flatline sound of the heart monitor echoed, signaling that Tricia had clinically died. At that moment, Tricia no longer wanted to witness the doctors trying to resuscitate her. She no longer cared about what was happening in the operating room. She left that room, passing through walls as if they didn't exist. She found herself in the night sky, floating above the city of Austin. A sense of freedom and lightness spread throughout her spiritual body. She no longer felt fear, no longer worried. Even though she was told she would have to return to her body, Tricia felt completely at peace, as if she could stay in this space forever without feeling any sadness. In that state, she realized that the physical world was just a stage, where people wear temporary costumes and learn lessons from life. All the pain, all the loss, and even death were just parts of this play, not the ultimate reality. Tricia also sensed the presence of everyone she had ever known, and a message seemed to echo within her heart: live better, love more, and cherish this life. And then, Tricia received a series of messages from the angels. Love is the most important thing. It's all that you take with you when you leave this world. Be like a child, return to nature. These messages were etched deep into her mind, becoming an indelible part of her life. When Tricia returned to her body after surgery, she clearly felt the difference between the state of floating outside and the sensation of being back in the physical world. Although her body was still in pain and weak, her mind had undergone a profound change. Tricia realized that she had just experienced something immense, a near-death experience she had only heard about in stories or books, but never truly believed in. She couldn't fully express her feelings upon realizing that human consciousness could exist beyond the limits of the physical body. The first sensations when waking up after surgery were of confusion. Tricia felt as though she hadn't fully returned to her body, as if part of her still existed outside. When a nurse came to ask her name, Tricia was confused. She responded, "Her name is Tricia," as if she was talking about someone else. The nurse shook her head gently and repeated, "No, what is your name?" Tricia suddenly realized she was coming back to reality, to the concrete existence of her own self, but the feeling of disconnection hadn't yet disappeared. In that moment, she felt a sadness about leaving the free and loving spiritual space she had just experienced. Tricia had to stay in the intensive care unit, ICU, for 3 days after the surgery. During this time, she began writing down all her memories of the angels she had seen. She feared that these memories might fade due to the effects of painkillers and anesthesia, so she meticulously noted every detail. The angels she encountered were not like the images she had seen in paintings or books. They were powerful beings of light, tall and exuding an aura of authority. This completely transformed how Tricia viewed spirituality and the afterlife. As her health gradually recovered, Tricia continuously shared her experience with the nurses and doctors. She asked them, "Do you believe in God?" Most nodded, saying they attended church, but none seemed to take a deep interest in what she was sharing. Tricia could clearly sense that they thought she was simply rambling due to the effects of the drugs, which made her feel lonely. Even when she asked the surgeon about the time she was clinically dead, and he confirmed she had been dead for about 2.5 minutes, she still couldn't fully express what she had seen. After leaving the hospital, Tricia began a long-term recovery process. She had to wear a rigid body brace for 9 months, and during that time, she lived with her mother and stepfather. During this period, she started reading many books on spirituality, exploring new philosophies and perspectives on life and death. Authors like Carlos Castaneda, Marianne Williamson, and Deepak Chopra became her inspiration and source of knowledge throughout her recovery. Returning to her body after a deep spiritual experience was an incredibly painful process. Tricia not only had to endure physical pain, but also had to deal with the complex emotions of feeling confined within her physical body. She vividly remembered the days before the accident, when she could run tens of kilometers every day. Now, just standing up was a challenge. Each time she tried to move, it felt like her spine was being burned by a hot iron rod. But as days went by, her body slowly healed. Every small step was a major victory, and Tricia began to believe that she would be able to walk again, just as the angels had promised her. One of the significant milestones in her recovery was when Tricia started walking around the neighborhood early in the morning or late at night, when the weather was cooler. Initially, walking was a great challenge, but gradually she began to feel more confident. Elderly neighbors living nearby started to notice her. They asked about her health and listened to her story about the near-death experience. In particular, those who had faced serious illnesses or near-death experiences themselves found comfort and inspiration in Tricia's story. She felt surrounded by support and encouragement from the people around her. Finally, when she reached the end of the street where she walked daily, her neighbors were waiting with coffee and applauding her for completing the difficult journey. Their encouragement made Tricia feel that life was no longer so lonely, and she was slowly regaining confidence in her ability to recover. During her recovery, Tricia also learned to access higher spiritual states through meditation and lucid dreaming practices. These new experiences helped her explore the nature of the mind and spirit, giving her additional motivation to continue her journey of self-discovery. Tricia realized that before the accident, she had lived a closed-off life, placing many barriers between herself and others. She feared opening up and worried that others might hurt her as her mother had. But after her near-death experience, she realized that everyone carries light and beauty within them, and she no longer needed to fear or distance herself from others. Tricia began to love people more sincerely. She saw the light in every person she met, and this filled her life with joy and connection. Tricia also experienced a heightened sense of empathy. She could clearly sense the thoughts and emotions of others. This allowed her to form deeper connections with animals and nature. Every time she went for a walk, she felt the energy from the trees and everything around her. She became more sensitive to the small yet significant things in life that she had never paid attention to before. Though her physical recovery was still slow, spiritually, Tricia had become an entirely different person. She was no longer the depressed, sorrowful girl she used to be. Now she felt she had a mission to spread love and light to everyone, and that became her sole purpose in life. After recovering and returning to normal life, Tricia felt she could no longer live as she had before. The near-death experience had completely changed her perspective on life, people, and what truly mattered. She realized that all the things she used to care about, money, status, or even personal goals, were no longer important. Instead, she felt that she carried within herself a greater mission, which was to help and inspire others. Trisha decided to pursue a career in teaching, even though it wasn't something she had ever wanted. Previously, she had planned to become a lawyer, with the goal of making money and living a comfortable life after graduating from the University of Texas. She had meticulously planned her life, studying law, traveling across Europe, and having a brilliant career in the future. But after meeting God and being given a special mission, Trisha couldn't return to her old dreams. Instead, she chose to become a teacher, even though this was entirely different from the path she had once set out for herself. At first, Trisha wasn't sure if she could take on this new role. She had never wanted to be a teacher, and she knew this job wouldn't provide her with the same high salary as being a lawyer. But the spiritual experiences she had during her near-death state made her believe that this was the path she was meant to follow. When she stepped into the classroom for the first time, a feeling of nervous excitement overwhelmed her. She didn't know what she would say to the students or how she would capture their attention. But as soon as Trisha began talking to the students, she realized that all she needed to do was be honest with them. She started by sharing her own story about her life before the accident, about the near-death experience, and the valuable lessons she had learned from it. The classroom fell silent, the students' eyes wide open, fully focused on every word she said. Trisha felt a strong connection between herself and the students, as if they were discovering something profound and sacred in her story. Trisha's story wasn't just a lesson about life and death. It was a reminder of the value of life, the importance of love, and the need for connection between people. Her students began to open up, sharing their own dreams and goals. Some even confided in Trisha about the challenges and fears they were facing in life. She became someone they trusted, not only as a teacher, but also as a friend and guide. Gradually, Trisha realized that her mission didn't stop at teaching academic knowledge. She had to help her students discover themselves, recognize the value of life, and learn to live with love and kindness. During her lessons, she not only taught them academic subjects, but also shared with them the importance of self-love and compassion for others. She encouraged them to connect with nature, find peace within themselves, and face life's challenges with courage and hope. The more time Trisha spent in the classroom, the more she realized that this was truly the path she was meant to follow. Though teaching wasn't always easy, she felt a deep sense of joy watching her students grow, discover themselves, and find the true meaning of life. She understood that not everyone would go through the same profound spiritual experiences as she did, but she believed that everyone could find peace and happiness if they opened their hearts and embraced love. Throughout her teaching career, Trisha continued to share her story with people outside of the classroom as well. She participated in speaking events, wrote books, and shared her near-death experience with people across the country. Her stories inspired many, especially those facing illness or life's challenges. She knew it was her responsibility to share the light and love she had received during her near-death experience, and that became her life's goal. One of the most important lessons Trisha learned from her near-death experience was the division between two basic emotional states: love and fear. She understood that many people in life were driven by fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of failure. But Trisha believed that love was the strongest force, capable of dispelling all fears. She emphasized that we could all live in love if we opened our hearts and embraced the goodness that life had to offer. Trisha also realized that nature played a crucial role in healing and restoring balance in life. She encouraged people to spend time connecting with nature, listening to the sound of the wind, feeling the coolness of water, and finding joy in the small yet precious things. Nature wasn't just a place to escape from the pressures of modern life, but a powerful spiritual energy source, helping us recover and find peace in our souls. Looking back on her journey, from a girl who was emotionally damaged, depressed, and lost, Trisha recognized that the accident and her near-death experience were the greatest turning points of her life. Although it was a painful event, it opened up a new world for her, a new way of perceiving life and death. She understood that everyone has a mission in life, and the most important thing is to listen to it and live true to that mission. Trisha's life after her near-death experience wasn't easy, but she always lived with gratitude and love. Every day, she reminded herself that love was the only thing we could carry with us when we leave this world. And with that mission, she continued to spread light and love to everyone around her, hoping that they too would find the true meaning of life and live fully with love and compassion.